Hi guys and welcome back to the kingdom. I hope you guys have had positive and productive weeks this week. So this week we are talking about words. Specifically words that 9 times out of 10 you don't actually need in your novel. So let's do this. I would just like to make a quick disclaimer before we start that I am totally a culprit of doing quite a few of these, particularly in my first drafts. And that is not to say that any of these words don't have a place at all in writing, it's just generally that place is very sparingly. Okay, so let's get into this. Now the first word that you should consider cutting from your writing is the word very. It's a filler word. Now what's the problem with very? Well, it's pretty much absolutely useless. It is not conveying any additional meaning to the story, and you should really see the word very as a wild flashing indicator that there's a better verb out there that you could use. Now there may be instances once or twice where the word very can help flow the story. It can also be used to help avoid repetition and help change things up a little bit. But most of the time you can cut the word very from your sentences and it will still make sense, and not only that, it'll actually deliver a better punch. Beth looked green, Beth looked very blue. Do you see how that sounded? Beth was green had a bit of a punch, whereas Beth was very blue felt like it had a little bit of a pause before you mentioned the word blue, which sometimes can be used to great dramatic effect, but most of the time it just kills the punch. A word that is very similar to this and should be cut for pretty much all the same reasons is the word just. In fact, you should cut it more often because the word just means it happened exactly like you were describing it, so what is the point in putting in the word just? The only other time that the word just is used is when something is actually more disappointing than you are describing it. So what is the point in describing it in the first place? If something is just red, describe it as red. If something is just sad, describe it as sad. Just is a filler word that really should be considered for the acts. More examples of words that should be cut for the same reasons is the word really and the word so. If something is really bright or so bright, I don't know whether you could hear that there, but I really could. It's like a big pause before you actually get to the interesting descriptive word. So you should probably just cut it. Okay, so another word that people should consider taking out of their books is the word that, because a lot of the time the sentence will still make sense if you remove the word. He said that he was fine. He said he was fine. Both make sense, and actually the second one to me had far more flow and was far more interesting. The word that was inconsequential to you understanding what the sentence was trying to get across, which means it was just a filler word. Now, it doesn't mean it doesn't have its place. If you are describing complicated concepts, the word that can be a useful pause to insert into your explanations, but most of the time it doesn't really need to be there. I tend to find that is thrown in there because we tend to write the way we speak, which is not how we should write at all. Now, when we speak, we use filler words such as like or literally, or sometimes we just use sounds like and and those are filler words that we use to give our brains time to think about what we're going to say next. That, I find, is the most common literary equivalent. Another phrase or cluster of words that you should consider axing is the phrase of the. Now, this is the kind of phrase that can be kind of 50-50. Sometimes it does work, sometimes it doesn't work. An example where it does work is the Wicked Witch of the West. This works because not only is the Western Wicked Witch a bit of a tongue twister, seriously, it took me way too long to say it for this video, but actually it kind of hides the important information. The important information is that the witch is wicked, and by having the of the West at the end, not only do you focus on the fact that she was wicked, but it also makes it a lot easier to say. Here are some examples where it doesn't work. The owner of the dog should be the dog's owner. The pages of the book should be the book's pages. One of the bolts came loose should just be a bolt came loose. Do you hear the difference? Because I really can. Now, I know I've talked before about having meaty chapters, but generally speaking, if a sentence can be shortened, so long as not all of your sentences are short, obviously you need to have some flowing and some variation, otherwise people get bored, but generally speaking, if you can shorten a sentence, that's probably better for delivering a bigger punch. Okay, so the last set of words that I really think that people should consider axing from their books are words to indicate inner monologues. These are words such as wondered or pondered or thought. For example, it's up the hill on the right. Fantastic, that's not far at all, he thought. Great, thanks. And compare that to, it's up on the hill on the right. Fantastic, that's not far at all. Great, thanks. Generally speaking, your reader doesn't need that verbal signal that it was an inner monologue and not spoken out loud, and that is generally because that is what speech marks are for. That is literally their purpose, to signal to the reader that this is speech. Therefore, the absence of them should signal that it is not speech and was in fact an inner monologue. Now, of course, this is just my personal opinion. Some people really like to add them. I know I put it in there a few times, but I find, generally speaking, that seeing those words can really make me drag my heels and lose a little bit of the flow of the book. Okay, so those are some of the words that I would consider cutting from your story. This video is slightly shorter this week, but that is to balance out the fact that last week's video was a little bit longer. I hope you have enjoyed this video. Do you have any other words that you think should be cut? Remember, all of these things are just my opinion. These are the words that I pull out when I do most of my edits or do any of my proofreading. If you guys have enjoyed this video, please do give it a big thumbs up, subscribe, and follow my social media links. Any questions, throw them in the comment section down below and I will get back to you as soon as I can. Or hit me up on any of my social media platforms. Do you think I've missed any words out? Do you disagree with some of the words I've said? Let's start a conversation. And most of all, I hope you guys had a positive and productive week this week, and I will see you next week for another book chatter video. Bye!